Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, the place to come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker, and welcome to episode 208 from the Vault. Episode 179, Being Assertive Means Detachment and Boundaries. Well, welcome back to this month, which is going to be featuring some of your favorite episodes of the show, namely around assertiveness. In this next episode from the Vault, it's all about how true assertiveness is about healthy detachment and good boundaries, both external ones and internal ones, aka self-discipline. Even if you aren't familiar with boundary work yet, this episode will spell some of it out for you. If you want to explore it even more, go back to some of the boundaries episodes. All right, so in short, episode 179 gets into how if we don't work on boundaries and detachment, we can end up rescuing, controlling, and enmeshing, and avoiding the healthy risk of just asking for what we need and letting go of the outcome. Practicing staying in our lane and being courageous and emotionally honest, we know is the best thing we can do for ourselves and our relationships, but it isn't always easy. All right, so let's get to it. Here's episode 179. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, the place to come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker, and welcome to episode 179. Being assertive means detachment and boundaries. Well, welcome back to this month, which has been, as you know, all about what we need to be assertive. We've talked about getting needs met in healthier ways, healing old wounds so we can feel confident and grounded, and ways to take responsibility for ourselves. Well, today we want to talk more about that responsibility, the responsibility to set boundaries for ourselves while we let go and allow others to do the same. I think that is the essence of assertiveness. Both of you are in a loving place of choice. There's no control, no hostage taking, no blurred boundaries here. Each person can feel safe and hopefully respected. In order to be assertive, we must make friends with healthy boundaries and not be in a space where we are secretly trying to get an outcome to happen. So what do I mean about detachment work? Detachment means letting go in love, not to punish, not to do the silent treatment, not to secretly seethe in silence, but to truly come to terms with reality and let go of what we can't control, which is pretty much everything about the other person and circumstances. But first you have to determine who owns what does belong to you, what is within your healthy control, and what respectfully belongs to the other person. Because being assertive also means being very respectful. We can't ask anything from them that we are also not willing to give. So what is yours versus theirs? Your thoughts, your beliefs, your feelings, your choices, and your behaviors are completely separate from their thoughts, feelings, choices, and behaviors. You've heard me say the phrase many times here on the show, just because they doesn't mean I, just because I doesn't mean they, or it doesn't mean it. For example, let's say they don't want to listen to how you feel. Your stuff, is that you're hurt by this and you wish it was different. But just because you wish that, and that is totally valid, like usually what we want and feel and need is valid. But that does not mean they even see the need to change, or even if they do, are they equipped and ready and mature enough to make those changes in a sustainable way. So you are parsing out your column of things versus their column of things. And sometimes it can take you a hot minute to figure out who owns what I think especially with people very close to you, situations you are knee-deep in already, those are harder to tease out and back out from. But you can do it. In order to do this, we also have to get really gut level honest. I mean, really honest about your true underlying agendas to see what you might need to detach. Look at your fears. If you have any fear, you're in trouble. You've heard me say that because fear is going to make us blind to what is ours because we're going to want to get our hands on what's theirs. And maybe because the stakes are so high. That's your child. That's your partner. That's your sibling. That's your family. You have a lot invested here. And there might be some big stakes where people are going to make some really scary decisions. And we want the best for them and we want the best for ourselves. We are, in essence, if we are rescuing, we are allergic to risk. And it's really hard for us to let go. But letting go is a part of taking responsibility. You have to own everything you think, feel, believe, need, do, what your choices are, and what you decide from here. We can't both play victim and be assertive. We have to pick one. So let's get into detachment a little more. How do you know it's time to detach? Like, most people don't want to admit that they can't have healthy boundaries in their relationships. And some of this stuff is so subtle and insidious, like we've talked about before. So sometimes you don't even know you're caught up until you're caught up. So you know it's time to detach when. And there's a million different examples, but here are some obvious ones. Their stuff or the situation is all you can think about. Even when you try to not think about it, it keeps popping back in your head consistently. Your anxiety, therefore, is high. You feel distracted, obviously not able to focus on your stuff. And guess what? That creates more stress and chaos, or it can, because then that stuff isn't being attended to. So it creates a ripple effect in our life. You know it's time to detach when you find yourself making excuses for their behavior, minimizing things that they do that aren't healthy, and turning a blind eye to things that they should be doing. Like if you're rescuing your kid from being responsible, you're going to turn a blind eye to the fact that maybe he left his room a mess, he didn't clean up after himself today, he's not doing his homework, she's not being respectful to her siblings, that kind of thing. You know it's time to detach when you aren't able to practice self-care around your physical and your mental health, and your emotional health, your relational health. A lot of times, everything else seems to go by the wayside because there's too much of a crisis, quote unquote, in front of you. You can't have bandwidth for everything else. It's almost like an addictive singular focus. So those are some ways you know you got your hands in something that doesn't belong to you, and it's time to practice detachment. Why is it a good thing? Well, first, it helps you refocus on what is actually within your control, so that you actually come back to some personal power and some sanity. Because deep down, guys, we know that we have no power over another person. We can't get them to see, get them to understand, get them to change, get them to feel, get them to show empathy. We can't. But we sure as hell will try, won't we? But we can't do that. And so because deep down, we know that that's not true, it is not within our power, it creates a lot of anxiety. Detachment is good for you because it helps you have better relationships that aren't enmeshed and unhealthy. That's kind of an obvious one. But that goes on and on and on because then you can have healthier connections, mutual trust, less anxiety and fear in the relationship. Because you can't have control and not have fear and distrust in the relationship. If it's a partnership, it often sets up a parent-child dynamic, which You can't be partners and be a parent-child. The child acts out against the parent resents the child partner. Detachment is good because it is good for your health and lowers your blood pressure. Another thing is it really helps you to be vulnerable and emotionally honest because, like we talked about a moment ago, you have to get real. You have to get real about what's going on in your heart around this, what you secretly are afraid of or wish for or both. And that can feel scary for people. If you have control issues around this stuff, you came by them honestly and for good reason. Maybe there are some things early on in life that you didn't really feel empowered. You didn't have healthy control, maybe in your family. Maybe there was too much chaos going on. Detachment's really good for the other person, even though they may not see this, because first of all, it shows respect for their boundaries. What they think, what they feel, what they choose, regardless of what we think about those things. That's the kicker. That's our stuff. Remember, parse it out. Who owns what? It forces us to let go of are they ready to face and even deal with what's going on or not. They may not even see there's a problem yet. They may still be in some fierce denial. Detachment is good for them because obviously it helps them learn and grow the hard way, especially if we don't rescue them. And if that's your kid, that's your partner, that's hard. That's really hard to let go, especially with kids, because in your mind for so many years, you probably had it that you were responsible for their care, keeping them safe, keeping them fed, teaching them, guiding their behavior. It gets tricky as they get older as to what to let go of. But if they don't solve their own problems, they will never feel good about themselves. They will have tons of shame, they won't trust themselves, and they'll play victim and entitled. Detachment's good for them because you become more emotionally safe to be around. And people tell me this all the time, even if they don't like your unwillingness to hand them money and bail them out again, even if they don't like your no, they all of a sudden feel better. Sometimes they get it, like if they've been doing some of the work, they understand, oh, that's why I feel better. Other times they may just feel better and they don't know why. At the end of the day, you're not giving them the message that they can't. You're handing it back to them, to whom it belongs. And then you're owning your own stuff, your own grief work, basically. Because that's what it is. If you can't change something, you sure as hell have to grieve it now. What you wished for and what you're afraid will happen. So how do you work on healthy detachment? First of all, stay in your lane. Do the who owns what. Be very judicious about watching your language, your behavior, your communication, all of it. This means not questioning them, even innocently. Don't give unsolicited advice. Stop offering too much help. You'll find a billion reasons why you can rationalize helping. You got to be really careful. Are you caring or are you caretaking? The way to know that is, are you doing stuff for them that they ought, should, and could do for self? It's within their control. They just don't want to, or they're not mature enough to get their shit together in order to do it, or both. Remember, if there's any fear involved around helping them help themselves, then don't do it. It's probably a rescue effort ready to happen. And we're not doing them or ourselves any favors. How to detach, honor your own boundaries. Expressing your own needs and feelings is healthy, and that is assertiveness. But then you got to let go of the outcome. That's the kicker. Speak your piece with an I statement, then let go. Know what is okay with you and what isn't. We can often blur these lines when we over-focus on other people and want to control the outcome. That's how people lose themselves in relationships and situations. Try to practice empathy. Put yourself in their shoes. In order to do this, I want you to think of times when you procrastinated, you didn't get your shit together, you didn't want to see the truth around something. I'm sure you have an example or two if you're a grown-up. Remember how hard that was? Do you remember how, God, you wish you had done that sooner? Then template that to the other person, probably in spades, right? That's where they are. Expressing empathy to them, like, I know this is hard for you, or I have to respect that you don't want to talk about this right now, allows them to experience the natural consequences of their actions, which is really important, or benefits of a good thing. Like if they're going to do their own thing and maybe we don't like their career choice, let's say, but they can go on and really experience some happiness. You can say things like, I'm so sorry that's happening to you, or you must be so excited, without inserting your own stuff. That is what's key. No one asked you. If they do ask you, you can say, I love you and I really want to support you. I do have some fear around the financial piece of that for you, but you're grown and it's your decision. So separate out your thoughts and feelings and needs, which are valid. And again, you might have to do some grief work here, and that is on you. When we don't grieve, we will leak it out on them. That's not okay. That's poor boundaries. Remind yourself why you are not responsible for their choices. I know that sounds like ridiculous to say that out loud. Why you're not responsible for their choices. But situations aren't always cut and dry and black and white. So it really does help to remind yourself why and why you're not being hurtful and uncaring and selfish if you don't bail them out, and why it just keeps the problem going and you're just going to hate them later. I mean, just all that stuff. It really does help also to talk to someone who gets it, gets boundaries, gets enabling, gets assertiveness, gets grieving. And finally, focus back on what is your responsibility today. Now, you may cycle through all these things all day long, and I want you to know that's okay. Don't be perfectionistic with yourself. It is a process where you fall off the horse and you get back on. You fall off and you get back on all day long if you have to. All that matters is that you get back on. You know, at the end of the day, we realize control is an illusion, and that the only way to feel confident and to be assertive is to work on detachment and boundaries. This is really great work. It does not happen overnight. It will begin working on you. Pack your patience with this stuff. And the more often that you can detach, the better. The more often you can have healthy boundaries, the better. You're not going to do this perfectly. No one does. If you screw it up, you fess up, and you own it with them, and you say, I'm sorry, that was so disrespectful. I was just worried about you. Okay. So a part of being assertive is boundary setting. But I think in order to set boundaries, first we have to feel like we have the right to, that we all have the right to. And again, I know that may sound ridiculous to some of you, but a lot of people grew up in families where overt or covert, that message was very clear. No, you don't. You don't deserve. And so that's why the Personal Bill of Rights, which has been all over the internet forever, goes like this. And you can look it up and look at it later if you want to. The first one is, life should have choices beyond mere survival. Like, you deserve to be happy and healthy, guys. 2, life should not be motivated by fear, which is all of what we talked about so far here on the episode today. Getting out of fear and out of control. 3, you have the right to say no to anything when you feel you're not ready or it isn't safe. Anything. No one has a right to tell you what those things should be. 4, you have a right to all your feelings. All of your feelings, even the negative ones. Not that you get to act them out on people, but you have a right to feel what you feel. Especially anger. 5, you're probably not guilty. The cop car might be behind you, but he's not coming for you. You don't own and you're not responsible for everything. See, that's where the boundary work comes into play, because people grow up often not even knowing where they end and others begin. Like, they're not responsible for other people's feelings or their choices. 6, you have the right to make mistakes. Yes, you do. Do you need to own them? Yes. Are you supposed to be perfect? No. Here's one some of you may identify with. There is no need to smile when you cry. You can just cry. There's no need to cry when you are angry, and you need to stand in your truth. 8, you have a right to terminate conversations with people who make you feel put down or humiliated. Amen. You don't have to stick around for that. That's not even, I'm going to preach, that's not even productive anyway. Nothing gets resolved without vulnerability. Unless they can tell you about them, how they're hurting, what they need, why they're mad, etc., you can't resolve anything anyway. So there's no point in standing in the room, having them shame you, put you down, gaslight you, and manipulate you, because that's all about control. That has nothing to do with solving problems. 9, you can be healthier than those around you. And as you grow, guys, you're going to outgrow. I know that sucks. It's a part of the work. But just because they're unhealthy, and those of you headed back home this week, you know what I'm talking about, doesn't mean you have to minimize, diminish, put under the sofa your growth and your progress. Be proud of that. 10, it is okay to be relaxed, playful, and frivolous. Not irresponsible, but you don't have to kill yourself all the time. You deserve some time off. 11, you have a right to change and grow. You can be completely different than how you used to be. The cool thing is that you can be completely different than how you used to be. 12, it is important to set limits and be selfish, but it's really not selfish. I wish they had put practice self-care. Selfish is when you don't take care of yourself and everyone around you's got to pay for it because you're a 5-year-old. Or you've gotten yourself into a mess, or you are a mess because you weren't taking care of yourself. 13, you can be angry at someone you love. You can. In fact, that does mean you care. Apathy is the opposite of that. And it doesn't mean all or nothing. You can be angry with them and still love them and want what is good for them. 14, you can take care of yourself no matter what circumstances you are in. Part of the empowerment work is trusting yourself that you got this, you can do it, you're smart, you're capable, and you probably underestimate your gifts. All right, so those are some rights that we all have. And when you practice assertiveness, what's key is, yes, you deserve those things, but the other person also does. They have the same rights as we do. And that helps us be a little bit more humble and respectful when we communicate. So we need to set boundaries for ourselves to feel as if we are safe. We are honoring what matters to us, and we are responsible for it, and we're responsible for our choices. We need to embrace boundaries because we're embracing reality. Then operating in it helps us to be, I think, less anxious, more grounded, and nicer to be around. Ever spent time around someone when they're all caught up in something? Yeah, it's like, hello, where'd you go? It's really hard to be caught up and to be present. So setting boundaries, you set them around your stuff, right? Your physical space, your time, your money, your emotional energy, and how much you're willing to do and not do. You set boundaries around your values, I think, and your beliefs. Like, what is priority for you this week? You may have to say no to something because you already had your goals set. It's not selfish. It's not uncaring. The only time that's selfish is if, let's say, you are a parent and you're like, well, I don't feel like doing anything this week. Well, that's not fair to the other parent, right? I mean, that should be negotiated. Your feelings. Maybe you don't want to be shamed, manipulated, or blamed. So you have to set boundaries around those things. Maybe being screamed at. Or even told what to think, feel, and need. Or what is best for you. That's a boundary violation. That's about them. Setting boundaries includes setting them around your needs. You have to take care of your own needs, so you have to have internal boundaries, self-discipline, in order to do that. You have to be willing to ask for help from other people to get things done if it's too much, and you allow them to do the same. You have to set boundaries around making time for your self-care. It's one thing to say, yeah, I'd really like to do that. It's another thing to make it real and put it on your calendar and follow through. Making time to get things done. Making time to have planning time about when you're going to get things done. Remember, keep backing up to the first domino. That'll really help you get to the root issues. Remember, you have the right to change your mind and about what you want, and that's okay. Of course, we own the consequences of canceling on someone at the last minute or backing out of an important function. Of course. But we're not responsible for their feelings around us canceling. Now, be prepared for pushback or maybe even punishment. I think it directly correlates to their emotional maturity and their self-absorption as to what you're going to get. Think about that for a moment. What you get back from setting a boundary, assuming you did this in a loving, healthy way, really speaks to their level of maturity. Like if they're not good at boundaries, they're going to feel like your no is a rejection of them as a person, when it's not. So finally, here are some pointers. Try to be really specific about your boundary, which I know can feel scary and vulnerable. But if not, it's like we're acting out. We're like, I don't have time for you is a really vague, shitty statement. Instead, I don't have time right now. Can we talk about this tomorrow? Do you see the difference in that? Don't assume they know what you need. It's not their job, it's yours. I mean, it's great for people to be aware and present to what they think we might need, but it's our job, really, to speak our needs. Sometimes we're afraid to do that because maybe we grew up where people did not take care of what we needed. And so we're secretly hoping other people will offer so we don't have to ask and be turned down and, God knows, disappointed again. But we have to own that. Keep it about you. No you statements or why statements here, guys. Say things like, I'm sorry I can't come by today. Or, if you continue to shame me, I'm going to have to leave the conversation. That's about you. Keep the boundary about this thing, never about them as a person, even if you're really pissed and hurt and upset. Don't do shaming. You might need to first sit and do some grief work and some detachment work before you can have a reasonable response. Otherwise, we're just lashing out at them all the stuff we don't want to accept. The I can't believe stuff. Know why you're setting this boundary for you, and you might have to talk to people first as to why you have to set the boundary if you're not familiar. Maybe you need the boundary to have more time for yourself, to not be overwhelmed maybe, to not rescue someone, or be rescued, or be controlled, or parented. So know why you're setting the boundary, and keep reminding yourself of why. Guys, when you set boundaries with unhealthy people, they're going to try to gaslight the shit out of it, to where you start doubting, well, maybe that is kind of harsh or selfish, or I had no right to ask for that kind of thing. Write in your phone why you're asking for this and why it's healthy. Also, I tell clients, I want you to write down what's going to happen really if you don't set this limit. Let's talk about that, because you got to own that too. Don't beg or apologize for your boundary. That's control. And do not give a long explanation to justify your boundary. That is control. You're trying to people please and control the outcome. Knock it off. Have your fear, but don't speak it. Just say, I'm sorry, I can't go tonight. Or I can't give you any more money. Use empathy, be firm yet kind, grounded, and as calm as you can be. If you're still emotionally and all worked up, it might not be time to talk to them yet. Go get grounded first. Work on the things we talked about today. Get some love and support around working on the things we talked about today. Get a coach if you know what you need to do, but you need some loving accountability in your relationships. Be direct. Do not use sarcasm or hint. Don't be vague. And finally, try to be as proactive as you can, like giving people as much heads up as you would want for yourself. Okay? Because for one thing, we want to allow them to have time and space to make other choices. The other thing is, otherwise, you're going to be setting reactive boundaries. You're going to be upset and pissed. And that never looks pretty. You're going to react and say, well, I can't help you with that. As opposed to, hey, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that today. As opposed to, hey, I think next week is looking a little crazy for me. So I'm going to give you time to ask someone else to help you. Okay. So today we talked about how in order to be assertive and have healthy communication in our relationships, we must do work on boundaries and loving detachment. And if we've done some work, we might need to do some more. If not, we can end up rescuing, controlling, and enmeshing ourselves. And I think avoiding the healthy risk of just asking for what we need and letting go of the outcome. Of facing the outcome. In other words, facing the reality of our relationships. It means practicing staying in our lane and being courageous and emotionally honest, because that's the best thing we can do for ourselves and for them. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you got some good stuff to work on this week, especially those of you traveling home or having people home. Great time with Family of Origin to practice loving detachment and healthy boundaries. I want to remind you that I still have 1 or 2 openings in the next several weeks for some new coaching clients. So if you want to work on boundaries and detachment, I'm your girl. Just hit me up on social media or reach out on the website. All right. So have a wonderful Thanksgiving for those of you who celebrate. Pay it forward. Keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time. All right, so there you go. A refresher on just how important choice, detachment, and boundaries play a huge role in being assertive and self-confident. If you want to learn more, just join our private group on Facebook, where I'll be doing live trainings every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. If you can't make that time, the recordings of the trainings are in there as well. The link for that group is in the show notes. If you have any questions about the group, just hit me up on social or send me an email. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you walked away with something you can use this week. And remember, everything you work on to make yourself healthier will pay off. If you don't already get the weekly newsletter, make sure you sign up at ownitpowercast.com, and then you'll get that in your inbox every Tuesday. All right, so pay it forward, keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you can begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.